All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video, we're going to be looking at the second half of the season. We're now in week 13 of the fantasy hockey season. Generally about 24 weeks before your playoffs will start, like for the whole season. So I'd say another 11 weeks until the playoffs start. So 13 weeks until really the end of the fantasy hockey season, which means to start to look at the first half of the season, kind of see where some guys have maybe overperformed and underperformed, and then kind of go from there. So for this video, I'm going to be looking at buy low candidates for the rest and second half of the season, taking in strength of schedule for the rest of the season, how a player has performed and maybe even underperformed in the first half of the season, and maybe we're going to see them kind of get back into form somewhere we've seen them in years past, that I think they can get there this year. So I have a player from each position. So if you need a player at each position, I think that'll kind of help you out. I have one center, one guy who plays center and right wing, and then a right wing or left wing, a D, and a goalie that you guys can try to target to help you win the second half of your league and end up, hopefully this is a player that can help you win kind of your entire league by the end of it when it comes to the playoffs. So 6 guys to get into. Let's get into today's video. All right, so the first guy we're going to be looking at, and honestly, I go into this video saying these are all buy low candidates. This guy I wouldn't say is necessarily buy low. It's just a guy I think you should get on your team as quickly as possible for the rest of the season. He's had a great start to the year and has definitely surprised some people considering the start of how this team has gone, but it's actually Joel Eriksson on the Minnesota Wild. So where he ranks right now, he's the 35th ranked fantasy hockey skater, looking at Yahoo standard scoring, and then a top 15 center right now. But he provides so much value in so many different ways. For one, Minnesota actually has the 6th easiest schedule for the remainder of the NHL season. So that's definitely one thing to note. I'll be touching on each of the players I touch on today. I will be talking about whether they have a hard or easy schedule. So Minnesota, definitely some players you can be targeting there. There's another guy in the Wild I'll be talking about in this video, but he plays a ton of minutes, essentially plays in every single situation, plays on the top line with Boldy and Kaprizov now obviously a little bit hurt right now, but still playing on that top line with Boldy, and they can add another winger in there. Plays on the first power play line and then plays on the second penalty kill. So playing over 20 minutes per game as a forward, as a center is obviously huge. He's top 15 in minutes played so far this season amongst forwards. Before Kaprizov actually went down, the line between him and Boldy, they were a top 4 line in the NHL when you're looking at expected goals for percentage, right around 65%. So great to see the amount of offense he continues to create, and we saw this even last year with Joel Eriksson, an expected goals for number of 35 plus and higher, and just a shooting percentage about 9%. He's rocking similar numbers so far this year, but has definitely been able to find the net at a little bit of a higher success, and just shoots the puck a ton. He has 140 shots on goal already this season right now, so should be, I think, a little bit higher and even creep into that top 10 among centers, I think, when you kind of see it all said and done. He also provides a ton of value. As I mentioned, he's on the penalty kill in bangers leagues right now. He's top 45 in hits amongst forwards right now with just about 70. He has about 30 block shots as well. And if you look at his numbers more recently, he's been even better. Second highest expected goals for throughout the month of December, only behind John Tavares, along with 60 plus shots and 30 hits. He's just a true Swiss Army knife this year, and honestly probably the best in that sense of a power forward, a guy who can hit, score goals, and get shots on net. It was the Kochetkov brothers for sure, and it still is. They're still considered in that category, but Matt Tkachuk, for whatever reason, can't score this year, and Brady Tkachuk has just been incredibly inconsistent and very frustrating, I think, for a lot of fantasy hockey owners who have him this year. So that's what you get if you try to get or pick up Eriksson. Just a lot of consistency. The longest he's gone without a point so far this season is 3 games, and it's currently right now. Other than that, it's just been a 2-game stretch where he hasn't been able to finish with a stat on the stat sheet this year. And even when he doesn't, you can kind of make up points, or even if you're in categories leagues, with his shots on goals, hits, and even block shots with the amount of time he's playing right now. So if there was a guy I'd be looking to give up to try to acquire Eriksson right now, there's definitely a couple guys in front of him that I would trade for him. So if I had JT Miller, I would trade a guy like JT Miller, Carter Verhaeghe, maybe even Sebastian Aho, considering how inconsistent the scoring is on that Carolina team. I think Zibanejad as well. I know he's gotten a lot hotter recently, but his start at the beginning of the season I still think is a little bit worrisome. Bor Horvat is a guy I've never really been a huge fan of. He obviously had a huge point streak before the Christmas break, and the Isles, I still don't think they're a great team altogether. I think the Wild are a better team, kind of just made up of all the players they have. And then Mark Scheifele is another guy I would try to trade for Joel Eriksson. So Joel Eriksson, I think by the end of this season will finish as a top 10 fantasy hockey center, and right now just outside the top 15 and just inside the top 40 in terms of fantasy hockey skaters. Definitely a guy I'd try to acquire. All right, the next guy we're going to be looking to buy low on for the second half of the season is Seth Jarvis on the Carolina Hurricanes. So this is a guy I was talking about who has the ability to play center and right wing right now. Right now he's the 115th ranked fantasy hockey skater in terms of Yahoo standard scoring points, and now that he has the center center and right wing capabilities. Obviously hasn't played a ton of center this season, but he's 38th ranked amongst centers this season, and then top 25, 22nd amongst his position in terms of right wingers. So a super solid month of December has certainly bumped up him into a buy low candidate for me. 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points throughout the month of December with 4 power play points as well. But the biggest thing there, he had the 6th highest expected goals for throughout the month of December, as well as creating the 3rd most high danger scoring chances for. So not totally right up there in terms of creating the same amount of offense as someone like Joel Eriksson, but considering how much he plays, probably 2 minutes less or a couple minutes less than Eriksson per game, and is still being able to create a ton of offense on this Carolina team that has generally been relatively crowded in terms of fantasy hockey production. You know, you have obviously Sebastian Aho, but so far this year, Natchez has pretty much done nothing. Andrei Svechnikov has been hurt. Michael Bunting hasn't really been the guy they were looking for when they added him in the offseason. So I think Seth Jarvis right now is the second best option to have on this Carolina Hurricanes team when you're looking at fantasy hockey forwards. And I think that's something to say because this Carolina team obviously has underperformed, I think, to this point of the season and will start to win a ton of games. They're on a 4-game winning streak right now, and I think Seth Jarvis is a guy that's going to continue to contribute on this team right now. He's been moved around the lineup for a good part of the season, but right now with Jesper Fast going down, he's actually now on the 3rd line with Jordan Staal and Jordan Martinook, but I think this is a great position for him considering this line before Fast went down was top 10 in terms of expected goals for percentage, so I think that's huge. I think Seth Jarvis adds another level to this line, a guy who could play a very similar style to Jesper Fast. He's very quick, he could score, he has a good shot, and maybe is just a little bit more grittier than Jesper Fast can be. He's still super young at 21, which is crazy. When you look at him, he certainly doesn't look 21, and he's been in the league now for I think 3 years. You'd think he'd be a little bit older, but one of those guys who broke into the league at a very young age. So I think you can even see him step up here in terms of maturity for the second half of the season, considering he knows that the scoring isn't really coming from anyone right now on this Carolina team other than Sebastian Aho. I need to be able to step up and be a top 6 forward on this team and contribute in factors that he needs to, and his stats and analytics are starting to show that right now too. So considering he's outside the top 100 in terms of fantasy hockey scoring right now, he's definitely a great buy low candidate, a guy who I think will be one of the better right wingers / centers by the end of the season. All right, so the right winger that I'm going to tell you guys to buy low on is on the Washington Capitals. It is actually Tom Wilson. A little bit of surprise. I know there's probably not a ton of Washington Capitals talk or probably players rostered on the Washington Capitals in terms of fantasy hockey right now, but Tom Wilson is definitely the guy you're going to want to target, especially for the rest of the season. Right now, ranked 165th amongst fantasy hockey skaters, so has a little bit of slow start of the season, but he's starting to pick it up for sure. He's still top 30, 29th ranked at his position right now at the right winger spot, but this guy provides value in a lot of different ways, very similar to Joel Eriksson, but even more in the bangers categories as well. But if you look at the month of December, he finished with 3 goals and 3 assists in 14 games. I don't think that really paints the entire picture for Tom Wilson. If you look at the position, he was 3rd amongst right wingers in terms of expected goals for, only behind Mikko Rantanen and Valeri Nichushkin, as Colorado scored at nauseum last month, so it kind of makes sense, but definitely good company to be a part of. He actually had a higher expected goals for, so technically was creating more offense than guys like David Pastrnak, Alex DeBrincat, who are right behind him, but those two guys had 17 points throughout the month of December. So sure, Pastrnak and DeBrincat, better players, I would say, in terms of skill, and have a better supporting cast around them, but it's still good company to be a part of, given the fact that you kind of have a ceiling of where Tom Wilson could go. And listen, Dylan Strome and Alex Ovechkin as line mates aren't the worst in the world for sure. I would still think those are really good partners to be playing with right now. But the one thing that you get from a guy like Tom Wilson that you won't get from another skilled winger like David Pastrnak or Alex DeBrincat is probably a better example, is his hits. 7th in hits so far this season with over 100 hits already on the year. And if you look at the month of December, he led his position at hits with 43, tied with Cal Clutterbuck, a guy who pretty much only hits. He won't be giving you 11 goals that Tom Wilson already has this season, and I think a number that he can achieve much higher at this point with how many chances he's really creating right now on this Washington Capitals team. Washington just hasn't really been able to score a whole lot, but I think that could change for Tom Wilson as you look at the second half of the season. He also has the second most high danger scoring chances at his position with a shooting percentage below 8 in the month of December. So the last 5 seasons, he hasn't had a shooting percentage under 14%. So that number I think will definitely go up. He's not a guy who's a volume shooter. I would say more takes a quality over quantity for sure, which is a little bit worrisome, a little bit more risky in terms of fantasy hockey. But with a guy whose shooting percentage is at 8% and a career shooting percentage that's 14, there's definitely some room to grow there for Tom Wilson. So Washington definitely doesn't have the easiest schedule for the remainder of the season, but someone's got to score on this team, and apparently it's not going to be Ovechkin anymore. So I'm going to look to someone else on this line in Tom Wilson, who is doing a much better job at creating offense, doesn't have the same volume of shots of Alexander Ovechkin, but is still going to be a guy I think you'll be able to rely on in fantasy hockey when it comes to someone, if you're in a bangers league for sure, because of his hits production, and then also points wise as well, as Washington continues to battle for a playoff spot. All right, so the left winger we're going to be buying low on for the rest of the season is Matt Boldy on the Minnesota Wild. So right now ranked 184th in terms of fantasy hockey skaters, ranked 30th in his position when you're looking at left wingers right now. He does have the duality of playing left winger and right wing in Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues right now, which is obviously a great thing to have if you already have him, and if you're looking to acquire him, just an added bonus as well. But the reason why I think Matt Boldy is a buy low candidate right now, for one, he missed a couple games to start the season. He's only played 29 games. He's missed 7 games so far already in this season. But if you look at last year, he was a top 75 fantasy hockey player, top 15 at his position right now. So I think he could definitely get back to that same spot. You know, left winger is a very hard position, I would say, in terms of fantasy hockey, of finding like really good scorers or guys who can continue to be effective. There's certainly more right wingers and centers for whatever reason, but left wingers, there's not as many left wingers that you can count on. And I think this is a really good opportunity to buy low on a guy who produced so well last season, who just hasn't really had the opportunity this year, considering he's missed 7 games, but I still think is having a decent season with 20 points through 29 games, 11 goals, 9 of those goals coming in the month of December as well. So it was one of the best left wingers when you're looking at the month of December, with 9 goals over that span. That was top 3 at the position there. But if you look at where he is right now in terms of all of his stats and where he can kind of get to right now, is 7-8 shots. Remember, he's missed 7 games. He has 78 shots through 29 games. Still on pace for 200 plus shots for the season. 9 goals through 29 games, or 11 goals through 29 games, on pace for about 25 to 30 goals again there. And for playing just 29 games, his expected goals for number is pretty high at 9.4. If you look at his rookie season, and obviously he's taken a little bit more time to develop here, as you know, last season we saw him score 30 plus goals, but his rookie season he played 46 games, and his expected goals for number was right around 9.4 as well, and we're already seeing him achieve that through 29 games. So he's clearly shooting the puck a lot more than he has over the past 2 seasons, maybe not last year, and then also just creating better offense on this Minnesota Wild team too. So obviously we now have Kaprizov, who's out week to week. We don't know how long he's necessarily going to be out for, but that's definitely gives Matt Boldy a little bit of wiggle room to start producing for this Minnesota Wild team, and giving John Hines, a new coach, just a little bit more confidence in playing him in all game situations that he did so well last season as well. With Zuccarello also out, he's going to be dependent on a lot more than I think we saw early on in this season, when he was coming back from injury a little bit, and those guys were both still on the ice. So even though these guys aren't out for the entire season, I think it still gives Matt Boldy a little bit of wiggle room to kind of start to get going here, build a little bit more confidence, and then when those guys come back, I don't think they'll really hurt his production at all. I think if anything, it'll help him, especially playing on that top line with Kirill. I don't think that will hurt him at all. But I think Boldy's recent performances and his finish last year at the position, scoring 30 plus goals, finishing top 15 in terms of left wingers last year in fantasy hockey, will give you enough reason to try and go for this guy. So try to buy low on Matt Boldy for the rest of the year. All right, so now looking at the defense position, looking at defenseman, Brandon Montour is the guy we're going to be buying low on. Might seem a little bit obvious considering how well he played last year, finishing with 73 points. But looking at how he started this season, he started with an injury, has played 21 games, and still to this point only has 6 points. This is the perfect time to buy low on, because a lot of people might be frustrated with him, and he's currently 152nd ranked in terms of fantasy hockey scoring at his position right now. But last year was the 5th best defenseman when you're looking at fantasy hockey scoring, finishing with 16 goals, 57 assists, and 73 points, 33 power play points, and 242 shots. He had 45 high danger scoring chances last year. I think this year he only has about 3. His shooting percentage is also at 2%. He's never had a full season where he's had a shooting percentage lower than 6% as an offensive defenseman. That's obviously very key. So he finally broke out last year, and I don't think that's necessarily a fluke. He missed all of September and October of this year, has played 21 games. He'll get a chance to play 44 games and could still finish with 65 points if you're looking at right now kind of his points percentage, and if he continues on the points percentage that he was on last season as well. The one big thing, he's going through a little bit of a slump right now, no point in his last 4 games, but I think we'll start to see a change here. In December, he was top 18 amongst defensemen in terms of expected goals for. I think it might take a little bit time for him, or it's taking a little bit time for him to see the kind of Brandon Montour that we wanted to see from last season, which isn't anything that's crazy. He's still playing 23 minutes per game. I still think Florida is one of the better teams in the East. They play really well defensively. defensively. Even without Ekblad and Montour, they're playing really well defensively. And now having these guys back, I think just adds another degree of offense. And I think we'll start to see Paul Maurice utilize Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad a little bit more moving forward as this kind of second half of the season kind of gets underway here. So I definitely think Brandon Montour is a guy you should be looking at. A lot of people might have forgotten, or if you're playing in a league with inexperienced people, they might not know how good he was last season, especially throughout the playoffs, because that's obviously not tracked when you're looking at your fantasy hockey league if they're just looking at the basic stats. So this is definitely a guy you should be looking at, considering his injury at the beginning of the season and how few points he has through the 21 games he's played thus far. Definitely try to get Brandon Montour on your squad. All right, and the last guy we're going to be buying low on, a goalie, and I've talked about him before, but I just think he is clearly the best candidate at this point of the season to be targeting, and that's Pyotr Kochetkov on the Carolina Hurricanes. Right now, 27th ranked at his position in terms of fantasy hockey scoring. Looking at Yahoo standard scoring, goalies like Vanacek, John Gibson, Logan Thompson have more points than him right now. His recent play, it can't go unnoticed, frankly. Like, he's been so much better since the start of December, I will say. If you look at this tweet from Walt Ruff, his Kochetkov's numbers for the season on December 11th were 4-6-1, a 312 goals against, and an 873 save percentage. Now Kochetkov's current numbers, or updated numbers, as of January 2nd for the season, 10-7-3, a 253 goals against, and a 904 save percentage, which means from December 11th to January 2nd, he started in 9 games, and his stats, he was 6-1-2 with a 2-3 goals against and a 920 save percentage and a goal saved above expected of 5.1, which was 8th best in the league over that span. So it's really hard for me actually to tell you guys to really trade for Pyotr Kochetkov, and Antti Ranta is back up as the backup for this team right now, who clearly won't be getting his starting job back anytime soon, considering what happened at the first half of the season. Even his first start back since coming up from the AHL, they beat Montreal 6-3, but I don't think he played particularly well in that game. For people who think Freddie Anderson is coming back and are scared that I don't want to trade for Kochetkov or give up too much because what if Anderson comes back, I'd be very surprised, because if a blood clot issue is severe, which clearly it is severe at this point, if we haven't heard anything about it, and frankly people have said in the comments, I've seen that there's a chance Freddie Anderson could be coming back in the next couple months, I would just be shocked if it is this severe, why they would take the risk at this point, because being a goalie with a blood clot issue, if you get cut, you could literally bleed out on the ice. So what's the point of even taking that risk at this point? If they're unsure of what the scenario and of the situation is, I don't think they're going to really put Freddie Anderson back in that position, especially considering how well Pyotr Kochetkov has played. They have goalies in their minor league system that have been very, very good as well. They have Yaniv Peretz, who's believes playing in the ECHL or AHL right now. They briefly called him up, but obviously never really got a start for the Carolina Hurricanes, a guy who was really good on Quinnipiac last year, won the national championship with that team. So Pyotr Kochetkov is definitely a guy I think you can rely on for the rest of the season. He started 19 games. I could see him being the workhorse goalie for the rest of the season for Carolina. They started off a little bit poor, had definitely some unlucky puck luck in terms of bad goaltending, figuring out defensive structure with new defensemen on the back end at the beginning of the season, which they struggled with. But now it seems like everything's coming together for this team. So if you're looking for wins, Kochetkov's going to be your guy, because I think Carolina is going to start to rattle off a bunch of wins, as we've seen since the second half has started. They've won every single game so far on a 4-game win streak, beating the shit out of the Rangers and beating some really good teams there, playing some solid hockey. And I think it's a little bit safer now, or these guys can play a little bit more relaxed, because they believe that Kochetkov has finally found his footing and can really stop pucks. So looking at his stats over his last 9 games played, that really proves it as well. So Pyotr Kochetkov, definitely a guy you should be targeting right now, and is really the main goalie in this buy low situation, considering the kind of goaltender volatility in the NHL right now. Definitely look to get Kochetkov on your roster before it's too late. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the second half buy low candidates. I'll definitely be doing some more second half videos for the rest of the season. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.